Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Tuesday, July 12th, Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting. And if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So our next item is to make adjustments to the agenda, and I would like on the consent agenda to move item D and have that become 8B under our administrator, his report. He received some additional information after the agenda was published, so I'd like to go ahead and do that right now. Are there other adjustments to the agenda? Seeing or hearing none. All in favor?
Oh, Madam Chair, point of order, I'd make the motion to
thank you.
accept the amended consent agenda.
Thank you so much, Commissioner.
I will second that.
Thank you so much. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Oh, and Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I said consent agenda, I just meant to approve the regular agenda.
Okay, thank you so much. Other discussion? Clarification? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. So we have our public comment period. This is an opportunity for citizens to appear before the county board. Any public comments?
Madam Chair, I have one that was submitted to me by email. This is from Mr. John Barton, and he states, "I fully and enthusiastically support the proposed Cook County Ordinance, Airport Ordinance, rules, regulations, and minimum standards. As you know, the Airport Commission has been working on this ordinance for over a year. It protects the interest of the county, sets non-discriminatory standards for users and existing and future businesses at the airport, meets the highly recommended best practices set forth by the FAA in the Assurance for Federally Funded Airports and the state in the draft state airport system plan, and will be essential part of the airport's master plan for the next 20 years. Please accept this statement in support at the public hearing of the ordinance at your regular meeting on July 12th. Thank you, John Barton, 36th East Big Bay Point, Hovland, Minnesota."
Thank you so much, Commissioner Swallison. Are there any other public comments?
I have received none, Madam Chair.
All right, very good. We'll move on then with our consent agenda items. Again, we have taken item D and moved it to 8B because of some additional information. Are there any other items that commissioners would like to have pulled from the agenda? All right, is the motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallison. Is there support? Support. Thank you, Commissioner. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. It's not 9:30 quite yet, so we're going to put off that public hearing. But let's have a little update from Sheriff Eliason. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Excuse me. So, yeah, I just wanted to give you guys an update as to what the status is with the sheriff's office currently. We have experienced a vacancy in our patrol staff, and when I wrote the board request initially, and I'd spoken about, the overtime budget may be affected significantly. We've mitigated that now, and mainly because we have the current vacancy. We are expecting another temporary vacancy in August for an FMLA leave, and excuse me, and we're expecting another vacancy for one of our full-time staff who is being backgrounded by another agency, and they would be actually foolish if they did not hire him because he's very good. So that's going to leave us down to 5 deputies for the month of August and September. And, excuse me, we were working on 8-man rotation with our schedule, with the 8 deputies. So when we lost the one, we were going to try to backfill the weekend shifts specifically and some of the night shifts and things like that, which would have impacted the overtime budget. Since learning that we may be down to 5 deputies for the peak season, we have made the difficult decision to switch the deputy schedule in the middle of the year, which is, I mean, it's not fair to them, but it's what we had to do. So, the days that they had expected to have off are gone. Their vacations that they had put in for need to be resubmitted and recalculated by them and their families. Besides them, we have 2 openings with our dispatch staff, and in the board request, I believe I put in there that we were expecting to offer one of the positions. Well, that's no longer on the table now. So we're still at two open positions with our dispatch staff, which means that they have been working more than their share of hours. Lindsay has been working more than her share of hours to fill in, and we may, be looking at some alterations with the dispatch staff as well. So just wanted to let you guys all know that. And I put some notes here. The staff, I just want to say this publicly. I commend the staff, and they should be commended by the public and others, because there are not too many government agencies or departments that would, and I'm not going to say readily accept, but accept a schedule change mid-year where, this is your schedule, all of a sudden, boom, well, we have to completely upheave your lives, the lives of your families, and we have to do this in the name of public safety, which we do. And they have accepted it, and that's why I want to commend them. Because them and their families, they do this because they accept the fact that they are there to serve, and they accept the fact that they need to provide public safety to Cook County. So that's I'm going to leave it at that, but I just want them to be recognized for doing that. And some of the challenges we have with hiring. Number one is an extremely challenging housing market. As everybody knows, it's tough to move up here even with a full-time job in your back pocket. It's tough to find a place to live. We've been thinking outside the box a little bit. We've had one of our staff, she's living up in the trailer park in Grand Portage, by the marina, for the summer, obviously. That's not going to last long, but she's only seasonal, which, works out that way. We've considered allowing staff to live in Silver Bay. Obviously, if it was a deputy, they could not take their squad car to Silver Bay. They would have to commute or leave their squad car at the county line, and then there's the issue of being on call and response time as well. But, in this current situation, we have to start thinking like that, I believe. And so we have the housing, we have wages, which are typically in Cook County. You could probably make a third more down in the metro area, and you're getting signing bonuses and everything like that. So we are trying to compete with that, which we're not competing. I'll say that. There's a shortage of applicants due to a reduced class sizes statewide. People are just not going to law enforcement school. At the current rate we are right now, there are not enough people in law enforcement school right now to fill all the retirements coming up in the next 3 years in the state of Minnesota. So everybody will be short, unfortunately. And we have a lengthy hire time. From the time we have the application process, interviews, second interviews, personality profile, then the selection, then the background investigation, purchasing uniforms, which, as we know, with supply chain issues, that can be an issue, and then the field training portion of the deputy. So typically, from the time the applications go out to the time we have somebody working by themselves in a full-time capacity is anywhere from 5 to 6 months. So trying to fill a position or two right now in the peak season, it's not even feasible. It's not going to happen. So we will run short for that time. And the other part of that equation, the hiring equation, is the cost of hiring somebody. I mean, I broke this down to when we were doing some negotiations with the city to show how much it costs for the sheriff's office and the county, I should say, the county to hire someone just for 1 year. And it's approximately $23,000 just to hire somebody. And that has to go, squad depreciation is about $10,000 a year because we have to keep a squad available for that person. So we are still paying for that squad even though it's sitting in our lot because that position is open. The overtime, shift differential, training, the hiring media, interviews, the field training, uniforms, administration, HR, physical exams, psychological exams, pre-psych exams, and post-licensing. It all comes to about $23,000. So we try to be as selective as we can because we don't want somebody coming in where obviously we're spending this great amount of money on them and then all of this time put into them, training them and moving them forward, and then, they find something better somewhere else. So that's where we are, and I'll take any questions that you have now.
I'd just like to thank you and your entire department for the service you provide, and it's so unfortunate that we're in this situation, and I know we are not the only place in Minnesota or in the nation that are feeling this way, but I want to thank you for all that you do.
Madam Chair. Sheriff Eliason, I just want to thank you too and your staff for the great work that you guys do. You put yourself in harm's way every day. And the community owes you a debt of gratitude for the work that you do. The issues that you're talking about are pretty enormous and really beyond our control to change immediately. But there are some things that I think we really need to be taking a hard look at. One of those is housing. I've been thinking for most of the last year that we really need to be thinking about possibly having some county-owned or county-leased properties that we could put people into when they get hired. And I know that would be an expensive proposition to well, actually it wouldn't. I mean, they'd be paying the rent, but it'd be complicated to get that in place. But I really think that's something that we should be thinking about, because without a landing place for new employees, it is that much harder to recruit. So the housing issue is obviously really key. But then there's the bigger issue, as you mentioned, of people simply not going into law enforcement. And that is across the state, it is across the nation. And so that's a vexing problem that I'm not sure we can really address. But I just, I want to recognize the sacrifice that the deputies and the dispatchers are making to continue providing service under really trying circumstances. Really grateful to all of them and to you and all your staff for the work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Other commissioners? Commissioner Hawkins.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate what you are doing to try to just get through the summer. I appreciate your staff stepping up. I just worry that we're putting too much on them, and okay, we've asked you to give up your summer vacations, your weekends off, but I don't see an end in sight, and our state legislature didn't help us out this year either.
Well,
what are we going to do?
I will say, and I should have added this, I'm sorry. We actually had, yesterday, HR informed me, we had two applicants for the deputy positions. So,
Good.
we have, those to look at. Unfortunately, the dispatcher position, we have nothing there right now. So that's the tough part right now, because they are the dispatchers. I mean, they are putting in so many hours right now, and their job is so difficult because they don't get a chance to, after a particularly nasty call, deputies, you know, I mean, when I was a deputy, you could get back in your squad car and you could go drive, you know, maybe out in the woods or do something. You get away, you know, they're held captive in that little block right there, and there's really no escape for them until they can leave. So it's you know, I feel for them, you know, the most actually.
Commissioner Mills.
I also want to just thank you for your work in the department and the whole department's work, and some of the issues that you brought up as far as the graduating classes is something I hear about in our statewide AMC meetings, and I just keep coming back to you know, our community, and everyone wants to live here, right? It's just how can we allow them to, or how can we get them to, how can we help that? And so you know, I just keep thinking about incentives. How can we incentivize either moving here or moving to the state of Minnesota? And I think by showing support and strengthening the department, strengthening the team, and just making our community a great place to work is one of the most effective ways to bring people here. And then there's, of course, the cost and the logistics of it, and that's something I think Administrator Yorkie is getting at pretty directly, and I think that's something we're going to have to talk more about, just so we have options. But we need to be able to make it easier for people to work and live here.
Precisely. Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. And thank you, too, for what you're doing with your staff. I think that you've come before us now, and I was wondering if you were planning on going before the general public, like WTIP, or have something in the paper. I think WTIP is probably the furthest reach for people to understand that, well, maybe what I have, I shouldn't really call dispatch about it, or maybe I don't have this emergency right now. But for them to understand the situation that you're in, and have some better feeling for the office, and the potential of, you know, being short-staffed and all of that. So maybe a wider scope on this would be helpful to the community.
Commissioner Spellison.
And I'll complete that with a thank you, but also to let you know that if there are things that you need our support, clearly, as you heard, we will and try to think out of the box on how to come up with housing solutions. We're all struggling with that, as are many of the other businesses and other entities here in the county. So we're certainly open to that. We're going to have to be more aggressive on that, it appears, if we're going to be able to solve some of these toughest hiring issues. And if you or your staff come up with other ideas or things that we need to be considering that are currently not allowed through the processes, but would clearly, you know, help, sure, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll have to take them into consideration. We'll see where we land with them, but yeah, we'll continue our discussions through with the city and everyone else to make sure that we're doing the best we can to provide you with the most relief that we can, but still provide the public safety aspects of it. But I thank you for all you're doing, and particularly all your staff.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hawkins.
One more question. So you said it's $23,000 a year for a new deputy. What about a dispatcher? How much?
Dispatcher, you know, it's significant. You know, the biggest cost is we don't have to hold a squad car for the dispatcher. Some of the uniform items that the deputies have are quite significant. You know, like their ballistic vests. You know, those are upwards to $2,000. FTO would be the same, because there's the same amount of FTO. Pretty much all the rest of it would be the same, especially HR. They don't do the psych exam or the medical exam for the dispatchers. They do the pre-psych exam, but that's kind of a minimal cost. So I haven't figured it out for the dispatcher, but it would like I said, it'd be significantly less.
Well, I'm wondering, is there a way we can qualifications, and I know I've seen the ads in the paper, and obviously you're not getting response, but I'm just trying to think of how do we get more people that already live here
Right.
to maybe consider that job, and is there anything we can do to encourage people to do that.
You know, I don't, you know, I don't know.
It's a difficult job.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
I mean, there's always incentives, you know, but, you know, if you, in my opinion, if you start incentives with one group, then you're gonna have to do that with all the groups in the county. So that's, you know, it's a difficult box to open up.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much. We appreciate the updates, and please keep us informed.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Have
you.
a good morning. So at this point, we have item 6, land services. And Tim Nelson is with us this morning to talk about the Vacation Rental Committee.
Good morning. I am here actually to address an oversight that is 100% my responsibility, and unfortunately, I didn't catch this until the day after the original appointments were made for the committee, and notifications were sent out to all of the members and alternates and such, that I had inadvertently received an application, one of the earlier ones on, and for some reason, it did not end up in the file of applications, and so it was not considered by the steering committee. Specifically, it would have been for the small resorts category, and there no doubt would have been some discussion with that. And so I basically, once I determined that indeed the application had been submitted and that it hadn't been considered, I made some calls to the individuals that had received the appointments for the respective type positions, and try to think of a creative way to be able to solve this and not disrupt the process too terribly much. And each of the individuals that had been appointed by the board were very excited and were very reluctant to give up their positions that they had been appointed to, and they wanted to kind of stick firm with the way that the appointments had been made. And so then the thought was, well, perhaps the least disruptive and the least impactful would be to, as we have looked towards the east and the west end, perhaps we can take a look at having some representation, adding a position and representing the north side, the Gunflint Trail. This individual, John Frederickson, is president of the Gunflint Trail Association and is the owner of the Gunflint Lodge and Outfitters. And so I ran this by the steering committee members and got consensus that that was probably the best idea and the least disruptive. Have everybody maintain their appointments that had already been made, and then just add this position, and it then reflects, you know, more voices rather than fewer voices. And so I just am here to recommend that we go ahead and appoint John to that committee, the first meeting of which is scheduled for 5 p.m. this next Monday, the 18th, which will indeed be live streamed, and open it for any questions.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you for accepting responsibility. We all make mistakes. I've made lots of them, and I appreciate you doing that. And I will just say that I had an opportunity to speak with John Frederickson long ago when we were first talking about the steering committee and other lodges that were along the Gunflint Trail. He was interested. I never did know if he had turned in an application or not. And I found out the morning after we had voted as a group that in fact he had turned in an application, and wondered why his name was not on the list as an applicant. And so I've thought a lot about this and thought about, as president of the Gunflint Trail Association, that he is really a very valuable or would be a very valuable member of the Vacation Rental Committee, that he is in constant contact with all the other lodges and resorts that are along the Gunflint Trail, and so I would support this. And thank you and the steering committee for recommending this to us. Other commissioners? Commissioner Stoyler.
Thank you, Tim, for digging deep in the files of your office to find this, because at the one time I thought, you know, it's kind of odd that we don't have anybody from the Gunflint, but I didn't think any more about it. So I'm glad they're going to be represented.
Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yeah, thank you, Tim, for bringing this up. And it makes a whole lot of sense when we have our Visitors Bureau. There is representation from Grand Marais, from the West End, from up the trail. So this makes a whole lot of sense to get that voice in there too. And want to apologize to John for that oversight, and I appreciate you accepting that responsibility as well. But a little uncomfortable changing our decided makeup, but I think it makes sense in this situation. So appreciate your flexibility there as well.
Other comments or remarks? Commissioner Svallesen.
I would just make a motion to add John Frederickson to the Vacation Rental Review Committee.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Svallesen. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Auditor Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First item is a request to set a public hearing to amend the property tax abatement resolution. This is for the SPV property in Tofty. Rob Dieter will be the owner. We actually approved a resolution for this October 26th of last year, but things have changed since then. The main thing is the timing of the project has moved out at least a year since then. Issues with the chain of supply chain and things like that. So the main thing is to change the date on this so that it starts when he actually is paying the bulk of his taxes, so it makes sense for the project. And there are other minor changes, but that's the main one. And the proposal is to set that date at the next meeting, July 26th at 9 a.m.
Any questions for Auditor Powers? Any discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make the motion to set a public hearing at 9 a.m. on July 26th to consider an amendment on the property tax abatement resolution that we approved on October 26th of 2021.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. You both said
That's
it at
fine.
the same time. All right, so we have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The second item is to approve a list of election judges for the 2022 state elections. This is something required in statute. And so before you see the list of judges, it includes those that were recommended by the state parties when you have a partisan election, which the state elections are. They're required to send lists of recommended judges, all the major parties, to the Secretary of State's office, who forwards them on to us. We contact them. Every one of them is on this list that has agreed to serve. The bulk of them are coming from returns from last election and years before, and some are new. I'm going to guess, it was asked yesterday, my guess was about 75% have served as election judges at some time, and probably 25% are new.
Well, it's great to have experience and also to have some new blood. Opportunity to involve other people in the public process. So.
Training starts next Monday, so next week, Monday and Wednesday. We're going to try to train the bulk of them, so.
2 weeks, right? It's been moved to 2 weeks. right?
I'm sorry, 25th, I'm sorry.
25th,
Yes,
okay.
not next Monday.
All right, Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a very impressive list. Is this atypical for communities our size?
Well, it is probably just because of the makeup of our election. We have so many mail ballot. Typically, you would see towns and cities each having their own lists of judges. In our case, we manage all of the elections, so we have the 2 precincts in town, which are almost half, because they staff those 2 precincts for Grand Marais, for all day, from 7 to 7. And so there's a lot of people there, probably have maybe 25 staff those. And the rest are for mail ballot precincts, their judges. And we've actually added a precinct. We've actually, a couple of precincts in the last few years. So we actually need a little bit more staffing than we did, say, 5 or 10 years ago. And it also covers, some people always have, things that come up, issues.
Yeah.
Not all of them are going to be able to make those elections. Some will be here for one of the elections, so it's a larger list than you would need for one election. Some are only coming for the primary, some just for the general. Most are doing both. So.
Well, I just want to give my thanks to the judges that we're about to appoint, because it's a very necessary part of the process, and really appreciate the service there.
And it's, compared to staffing shortages, we've had so little problem recruiting judges. We worry about it every year, but people come forward here. We have a great community of volunteers. And I know they do advertising and recruiting in other counties across the state, and we're ready to, but we haven't had to in general, so.
Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. Thank you, Brady, for this extensive list, and thanks to those people who signed up, because it is so questionable across the country about voting and all of that. Do you have a date as to when the ballots are actually going to go out?
We've started working on that. We've got a team of 6 people here right now, at 9 o'clock. Today, we hope today, tomorrow, and then we'll be mailing them out on Friday, is the plan. So, the absentee ballots have already been going out. That started a couple weeks ago. So.
Other questions or comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallowson. We have a motion to approve the list of citizens to serve as our election judges for 2022. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Last item I have is just to set a public hearing to consider changes to our fee schedule. The request came from the Community Center Board of Trustees, and Sarah provided the summary of the request that they have, but this is then a chance for all the departments, if they have any changes that they'd like to, generally 2 or 3 will have some adjustment from previous years, so it could be a number of others, and we'll supply those to you prior to the meeting, assuming they're ready. But these are, as you can see, it's not difficult to schedule these hearings, so it's not like everybody has to rush and get them in. This is their only chance for the year, so we can do this at any time we need to. So you could choose as soon as the next meeting.
So
if
that
you'd
would be
like.
July 26th?
Yeah, and we'll put the notice in for this Friday.
Okay. Great. Any further discussion or questions for Auditor Powers? If not, I'd accept a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. Is there support? Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All
Madam
in favor?
Chair, I'd just like to thank Sarah Waddle for her work in reviewing these fees and making sure that they're aligned with the actual costs of the services that we're providing. So thanks, Sarah, for that.
Absolutely.
The board didn't say. I did suggest.
Would you like to amend, Commissioner Hawkins?
See, we have one at 9 o'clock. Do we
Right.
want it 9:30? Or do you want, whatever you would like?
Auditor Powers?
I would think 9:30
Okay.
would fit. I wouldn't go any later, since you guys are so efficient lately.
July 26th, 9:30. We have a motion and we have support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Thank you so much. On to item 8.
Oh, that's me. Okay, good morning.
A
Probably
little bit about the Superior Cycling Association.
Probably need a little more coffee. Yes, so this morning we have a couple of guests with us, Paul Nordland and Tim Kennedy from the Superior Cycling Association. They have they're working on a grant application to create what they call a pump track at the hockey rink, which would enable local kids and adults to develop their mountain biking skills here in town. And so I guess without further ado, I'll just turn it over to Paul and Tim to share their information. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having us. We've been working on this project, a bicycle pump track in a skills park, pushing 6 years probably. Our biggest difficulty has been finding a place, a piece of land that would work. Every time we would find a piece of land, there would be something that would stop us. There was a roadblock somewhere. One day, while sitting at the skate park, watching my kids play, I looked over and I saw the hockey rink, and I'm like, wow, how big is that? And I went and stood in the middle, and I'm like, you could do a lot with this space. Contacted a company called Progressive Ramps, or American Ramp Company, and said, could we fit a pump track and some skills features inside a hockey rink? And they said, well, actually, yes, we've done one in Canada. And so that's what I started working on there. What is a pump track? Pump track is a set of rollers and berms set up in different configurations. Really set up where once a rider starts riding and they start pumping, they don't really need to pedal anymore. They kind of create their own energy through the pumping action of the bicycle. I'll add here that it's not just bikes. It's called a bicycle pump track, but they use skateboards, inline skates, scooters on them. So it is multi-use. What is a skills park? A skills park is a set of features that are set up to test and hone the balance skills of riders. In our case, I think we're going to mainly see younger riders, but adults use them as well. So background, bike-related activity is growing as active living in Cook County through partly our building of mountain bike trails. For Tim will have a little bit more on that once I turn it over to him. But we've seen significant growth in the numbers of people on bikes, especially mountain bikes in our community. The skateboard park is crowded. You go there on any given day, it's probably the single most used on a regular basis recreation amenity we have in the county. It's bursting at the seams at times. We could divert some of that use over to this new park. Liability, I've talked with Attorney Hicken. It's not an issue. She can weigh in on that more, but I think that's what government does really well, is accept liability for public facilities. Budget. We're looking at $225,000 to $250,000. Now, that seems like a big number, but one of the things, what's nice about what we're looking at here is it's modular. Everything bolts together. All the pieces of the pump track. Can all of you see what I'm looking at? Mm-hmm. So, when you go back to the first slide, you can see the vertical ribs on each of the pieces where they bolt together. These whole pump tracks are designed that they can be taken apart and two people can carry each section. So it's removable, modular. We would have it out of there in the fall so that before hockey season would ever start. Storage, they actually give us a little bit of a diagram on how to stack them most efficiently. This company's really good at what they do, and we would just have to find that storage space. A couple places I've identified as maybe against the backstop at the baseball field, or since the rain garden, which is really close to the ice rink would be another place during the winter could be stored. So solution, I talked a little bit about, it's a modular pump track. All of the skills features are all going to be built on metal platforms so that they're stable, so that they can also be picked up and moved out of the hockey rink. The space exists. We could utilize it in the summer. It's, I don't know that there's any use for it in the summer right now other than something like this. We had met with the community center board, who we found out they had kind of explored this idea. Could we use the hockey rink maybe for something bicycle related in the summer in the past? So it's something that was already thought about even locally. So here is the proposed layout, pretty impressive. That pump track gives each rider the ability to go and receive the skills that they need from, there's multiple berm direction changes, multiple spacing on the rollers. It's not too short, it's not too long. You can see in the middle, you can see the run in and run outs that are designed into them. They normally would see this on concrete, and that it was really to facilitate the multiple user groups. Skateboards, scooters are going to have a hard time on our natural surface gravel surface that's there right now. But once they're inside the pump track, they're going to be just fine. It's the roll in and the roll out is going to be a little bit hard for them. Eventually, I know that we would like to see concrete, and I know that the Hockey Association would like to see concrete. I did some digging on some general budget on that and was quite shocked at $250,000 plus, between $250,000 and $300,000 to put concrete in there. But once I started analyzing that, it's like, well, okay, it's I can't remember, 283 yards of concrete at $400 a yard. There's $20,000 worth of foam that has to go under it because I can't remember the square footage anymore, but it's really big, like 7,000 square feet or something like that. So that right now is we had originally thought maybe we would include concrete in some of our granting, our grant requests, but I think it's too big of a beast to tackle right now. I think it's something that maybe as a larger community, county, city, hockey association, bike club, community center, maybe we can plan for something in year number 3 or something like that. But going backwards, it works for bikes, which is our intended purpose, and it will work for others, just not perfect.
Paul, on the concrete, would that be like a 4-inch pour?
5-inch pour.
Gotcha.
The concrete contractors that I talked to suggested 5.
Mm-hmm.
And my numbers, my raw material numbers didn't even start to look at rebar and what that, what reinforcement looks like on something like that. And so, there may be $30,000 worth of rebar in it or more.
Right.
It's it's a scale that I've never really looked at before on something that big of a slab.
Mm-hmm.
So unique. So this is a very unique project. I thought we would be the first in Minnesota to do this. We're kind of in a bubble up here. It turns out that once I started talking to other people in other communities, like, oh yeah, no, we've been putting these in skate parks and elsewhere in the state for a few years now. So it tells me that it works. That other communities are doing it. I was a little bummed out that I wasn't the first. But oh well, live with it. So I guess bicycle skill park, it's expandable and movable. I covered that. These are where skate parks were in the late 90s. There was an explosion of skate parks in the middle to late 90s into the early 2000s, and this is the new thing. One of the things we're working on a bigger picture is we do want this larger skills park that would include single track, that's in town, south of the Gunflint Trail, north of Highway 61, easy access, easy safe access for kids. We do hope that that we can work with the school board and some school lands, and there are some trails that are already on school lands that could be upgraded, that we could write grants for to make them much more sustainable, wider, better. And these features that we're looking at, the balance features, they would all be movable to that. I think at that point, we would evaluate the success of the pump track and say, wow, maybe we should have 2 pump tracks. You know, that the pump track takes up about half of the hockey rink, and, you know, whatever that time frame is what, as to when we would move forward with our bigger park, we would evaluate that at that time. So budget. So the park that we looked at, $221,951.24. That is built, delivered, installed, and training given to our local volunteers on how to take it apart and put it back together. All of these pieces are metal. They're steel, welded steel with a composite surface, except for the skills features are steel structures with wood decking on it. All durable to the elements. So that's kind of the nutshell of what we're asking for in terms of use of the hockey rink. We've gone through the Hockey Association who support this, the Community Center Board who support this. I also sit on the Parks and Trails Commission. We have talked about this at the Parks and Trail Commission meetings, and as a group, we support this. So our next step is to get your support for this use. And then Tim will talk a little bit more about the grant side of things and the funding, and because we'll also need your support there as well. And I don't know if you would want to wait and combine those as a motion or make 2 separate motions, but I would take questions right now on the part that I just presented.
Questions by any commissioners? Commissioner Mills?
I don't have questions, but I just want to thank you for bringing this forward. And we did have really good discussion at the Parks and Trails Commission about it. A lot of support, a lot of excitement, and I'm just excited to see kind of that bigger scope. I see this as I really like the modular aspect of it because it can be moved. It could be installed elsewhere if need be. There's just a lot of flexibility there. So as far as an investment is concerned, it's a really flexible investment and really speaks to the values of our community, outdoor recreation, and supporting kids in particular too. So don't think I have any questions. Maybe as more discussion takes place.
And I'm just really excited that it offers kids an opportunity to learn and develop skills for a lifelong activity. So that's really exciting.
Madam Chair. I too am excited about this proposal. You know, I think anything we can do, first of all, the hockey rink basically sits vacant for, what, eight plus months a year. And this would give us an opportunity to use that space essentially year-round. So I think that's a great thing. And as Commissioner Mills said, anything that we can do to promote active living is just a benefit for the whole community. So thank you for bringing this forward. One question I do have, since the Cycling Association is a volunteer group, currently our staffing at the community center is 1.5 FTE, basically. And Sarah and Leanne are stretched pretty thin. They've got a lot going on. And so I would just want to make sure that, you know, operationally we have the help that we need from the association when things do need to be moved, that the association would take care of that, and that wouldn't be put on our staff because frankly we just don't have bandwidth to accommodate that.
Yeah, one of the things that it's really great with the Superior Cycling Association is our volunteerism. You know, we get trail work days where we've had 20 people show up, and I think we can make pretty light work of this. Mm-hmm. Our hope is that this expands beyond those people who ride single track and want to go out and work on the trail because it's so much more accessible to so many more local youth that I hope that we're going to get more parental participation and stuff like that haven't been part of the mountain bike scene. When I first brought this down and showed Mike Roth at the city, or we talked about it, I can't remember his name, one of the guys that works there is like, oh, I'm so excited about this, count me in, I'll help whatever you want. Who's the?
Patrick?
Patrick, yep. He's a skateboarder and he wants to ride a skateboard on it. So I think once this gets out to the public, I think we'll have a lot of really good support for it, for the volunteer days. And I really think it could all be done in one day if we had the right number of people. So.
Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. Well, this is really innovative. I think it's a great idea. I was wondering about how, according to this picture, how much of the actual arena will be used for the setup. And you said half?
Well, if we
Or
go
is it,
back, I'll
you're only buying so much right now?
the $221,000 is everything you see in the picture.
Okay,
So
and
the
how much
pump,
is
the
that
pump
filled?
track itself takes up about half or a little less than half, and then the skills features will fill up the rest.
So it will be all filled?
It will be all filled.
Oh, okay.
Yep, it will be
That's
all
great.
filled, and if you look at how much room there is to spread out here,
Yeah.
I think we can accommodate a really good number of kids in that space at any given time. One of the things that's really impressive in watching the kids in the skate park is how they sort of police themselves in taking turns, and they're very, very cognizant of where everybody is. I always imagined, going in there with my 3-year-old on a little balance bike. I'm worried about collisions, and you just don't see them. They're really aware of where each other are, and they give each other their own space to do what they want to do. And I think this is a much bigger space than the hockey or the skate park is.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much. Tim?
Well, thank you. Yeah, this is good to be back before the county board. I wanted to back up just a little bit and kind of go back to our previous experience with the county in terms of applying for a Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Legacy Grant. It was about 6 years ago. The Superior Cycling Association, with partnership from the U.S. Forest Service and the county, submitted 4 applications for grants to help us improve and build our system of mountain bike trails that we currently have. That was about $1.2 million worth of trail building that took place and resulted in rehabilitation of our Britton Peak trails and the connector trail, Jackpot High Climber, which have become really destination riding experiences for mountain bikers from around the Midwest. It's really on the map. People come here specifically for that trail, and we want to continue on that kind of pathway. We do have a plan. I mean, we prepared a master plan, and so it's not like we're just thinking up these ideas. These ideas are well thought out. The skills park is part of this plan. The connector trail is part of this plan. Taking care of our trails is part of the plan. So what we're here today talking about is a similar type of thing. We have 4 applications, grant applications that we're working on. In fact, 2 of them have already been submitted, and 1 has been awarded. 1 Federal Recreational Trail Program grant to the state has been awarded to the tune of $100,000, and that was kind of what happened last time. The Federal Recreational Program grant was kind of the catalyst for all these other grants to kind of piggyback, because we try to use partnerships and arrangements that allow us to work with others to maximize the impact that we can have. So the other grant that we have already submitted is a Legislative Citizens Commission of Minnesota Resources grant for $200,000 that would involve rehabilitation of trail at Pincushion, and that trail was built back starting 2005, 2006 on county-owned land. And it wasn't until 2009, 2010 that we actually started building on federal lands. We have about 10 miles of trail at Pincushion now. A lot of it was still hand-built trail with, far different standards than we see today, and the expectation of riders is far different. So we want to get those trails at Pincushion improved and put into the kind of the class and standard that riders have come to expect. The other grants then that we're looking at are the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission Legacy Grant, which is what we're here talking about today. And also there'll be an additional grant request to IRRB that will come through the EDA. And total of those 4 grants, we're expecting to be somewhere around $900,000, which would facilitate a section of new trail at Pincushion. It's the only section that we have approval from the Forest Service to build additional trail. And the rehabilitation of Pincushion, rehabilitation of some of our newer trails, even down on the west end, and the Skills Park, which has been something, as Paul said, we've been talking about for a long time. We finally think we've found the pathway to make this a real success story. So what we're here to talk about today is kind of the Skills Park and the legacy application. First of all, the Skills Park helps us to engage youth in the community in mountain biking skills. Also to help assist and train adults, those of us that might not have had the experience to learn how to take those kinds of features. And mountain biking is a challenging sport, and if you don't have the skills, getting out on a trail can be really difficult. And some people try it once and say that's not for me. Unfortunately, they probably should have gotten some tips or some lessons, and maybe that would have helped their abilities and give them a little bit more confidence to ride some of these more challenging trails. And the other part that we want to incorporate in the Bike Skills Park is also a programming element, which would involve specific training programs that would be designed to bring kids into after-school programs or summer programs, even adults on weekend programs that would teach the skills that they might need to build confidence and build those skills so they can get out and ride our single track, which are just some incredibly amazing trails out in the middle of the woods that, I've even run into Stacy out out there. I was, yes.
You're talking about me when you're saying I need some skill building.
I think you admitted to that. But the idea is to look at this legacy application with the understanding of what the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission really is intending to do. And they're creating a system of regional parks and trails around the state in Greater Minnesota. And they use 4 pillars to kind of decide how to fund the parks and trails that they work with. And one of the pillars that they use is this pillar of connecting people to the outdoors. They find that if we don't teach people how to use the skills to utilize the outdoors, they generally don't engage themselves. And so they've set aside specifically in their allotment of funding a particular amount in this connecting people to the outdoors category. And the other pillar that we think that we really align well with is taking care of what we have, and that's the rehabilitation of trails that we have that are part of the system that don't meet standards and don't meet what the expectations are of riders today. One additional element that we're adding to that is that we're also working with Courage Kenny Northland out of Duluth, and their interest in trying to assure that mountain bike trails that get built can accommodate adaptive bikes. And I've had conversations, a number of conversations. I've actually gone out and ridden with an adaptive bike rider and can see the challenges that they have with what we've done. Generally, it's the issue of the boardwalks that we built that for a normal rider, a 24, 29, or 28-inch boardwalk is plenty adequate, but adaptive bike riders use a sit bike, the recumbent type bike, that requires wider boardwalks. And we now are working with the Forest Service. All of our rehab trails and boardwalks will accommodate 36-inch or greater boardwalk widths to address that issue of adaptive bikes. I think it's a good move, and I think it doesn't diminish from the experience of any other riders. It just allows some other riders to get out there that might not otherwise be able to ride. So really what we're here for today is to ask the county board to be the applicant for the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Legacy Grant, similar to what was done in our last go-round of grants. The legacy application is right now looking to be maybe $390,000, which would include the skills park, the programming, and trail rehab on some of our trails down in the West End. Also to have the county act as fiscal agent for the grant, and to not only this grant but all the grants, which is what the county has done over the prior history too, is to act as fiscal agent. And that relationship I think has worked pretty well. And then to grant the use of the space at the hockey arena for this use, so that we can place the pump track and skills features in that location. We don't have a finalized grant yet. The deadline for getting this submitted is the end of June or July, and there's a lot of the details that we still need to work out, but the expectation is that we will have that information. We could have it for the county board meeting, last meeting of the month, and there would be time to take a look and review the details that we have put together. So I think that I think I'll leave it to questions and see what we can do.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Mills.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's worked well in the past for the county to be the fiscal agent and the grant app. And just to be clear for us and for the public, is the county on the hook for anything by doing that? And maybe Brady can help answer that too.
I'll have to defer to Tim.
Staff time.
Yeah.
You know, Courtney does this for multiple grants. You know, kind of one of the things the county does. That's one of the commitments that the county has. The other is that they have to pass a resolution that says they will submit the application and agree that there's a commitment of 20 years to our trails, and of course part of the trails are on county land at Pincushion. So that commitment would continue for another 20 years, that those trails would be obligated under this program, which I don't think county has any plans to do anything different with that. I mean, it's the recreation area, and yeah.
Yeah, there's typically a match, but it can be in kind, and in the past, it's been a combination of in kind, and the club has raised money also for some of the grants.
Yeah, and the matches, I mean, every one of the grants has different formulas. The FRTP grant, the one we start with, requires a 25% match, so the full project is $100,000. $75,000 of it is coming from the Federal Recreational Trail Program. We generally use that as a match to some of our other grant applications, although none of them specifically require a match. It's always good to show that these partnerships and relationships do exist.
I'll correct that, though. So we have raised the match for the FRTP through IRRB Trails grant with the EDA. So that matching, those matching funds have come. And then in the future, IRRB requires a 1-to-1 match. So all of these grants, the LCCMR and this legacy grant, I don't know if we can actually use the FRTP once we've already had the match with the IRRB can be used, but the LCCMR and the legacy grant will be used as a match for the IRRB grant.
Other questions? Commissioner Mills?
Also, just really want to give my appreciation for having the master plan like you do. I think that's really important to have a comprehensive plan when you're tackling projects, and clearly it's showing success and it's ongoing. So I just appreciate that work ahead of time.
Sarah?
Could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Does the 20-year commitment apply to the bike park and the hockey rink as well? So we would have to have it in the hockey rink for 20 years?
No, we wouldn't. I don't necessarily think we have to have it in the hockey rink for 20 years. I think we'd have to have it
It would have
in
to
use
exist
for that
20
long.
years.
Yeah. That's a good question.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. Any other questions or remarks?
So following that line of thinking, if the hockey rink changes as far as its use is concerned, then we'd have to figure out a way to move the skills park and the pump track. But
Somewhere,
yeah, and the fact that it's modular really allows for that to happen, and then it's just a matter of finding its place. So, which I think in our conversations at the Parks and Trails Board, that is kind of the dream anyways in the master plan, is to have something a little more substantial or in a different, utilizing different features of the landscape.
It is, and I think, I'm predicting that the pump track stays in the hockey rink as long as we can have it there. Just from a couple reasons. One is, as a parent, being able to have access right there to watch the kids, especially little kids, is really important. That's one of the nice things about the skate park is you can park right there and watch. And then the access to a restroom, the soda machine, that type of stuff. And I hope through the programming that, which we have a lot to develop yet, but I have been speaking with Emily Marshall and had conversations about the programming coming through the Y. And we, part of the programming, I think eventually we want to start a bicycle lease program. One of the barriers to mountain biking is cost. The bikes are not cheap. And even though you can ride almost any bike on there, the bikes that are actually optimized for riding out there tend to be expensive. And I'm hoping that we can write a couple short-term grants to have a bicycle lease program at some point where we can say $150 a year, you can lease this bike, and then we have funds to keep this program going into the future. And so that could be part of the programming, but the other part of the programming is to actually be able to maybe use the warming house at some point during the summer. So I think having the pump track in that ice rink long-term is going to make a lot of sense. And like I said, at some point I foresee us maybe even putting 2 pump tracks in there once we build the bigger skills park where we put the other features out on single track trail at some point. But that's often it's another dream. SCA's motto is dream, build, ride. We've gone through the dream stage and build stage, and we've done lots of riding, but we gotta keep dreaming. So.
Any other questions? Not, I'd entertain a motion. Commissioner Hawkins?
I'll make the motion to approve the Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails Legacy Grant and approve the use of the hockey rink as a bike park.
Thank you so much. Is there support?
Support?
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We're going to take just a quick pause, and then in 5 minutes, start our public hearing for the airport ordinance. All right, thank you. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone back from our short recess, and we are here this morning to have a public hearing regarding our airport ordinance. We've had a number of opportunities to talk about the airport ordinance. We had a committee of the whole meeting where we discussed all the changes and features of the ordinance, and so today we're here to allow the public to weigh in. And are there any people in the audience that would like to speak? If so, come forward to the microphone and sign in. Good morning, John Barton.
Morning. I'm John Barton, resident of Hopeland, Minnesota, and also the chairman of the Airport Commission. Just like to thank you for holding this meeting and reiterate the support that the entire Airport Commission has for this project. It's been a long time coming, over a year of work. Many of the stars in processing this document are sitting up there. Thank you for your effort. It meets a long-standing best practice that the FAA has had for ensuring equal opportunity and non-discrimination and so on in the application of aeronautical resources nationally. And this is a way to codify that on the local level to make sure as we move forward with establishing perhaps new businesses or leases of airport property that we do that in conformance with federal requirements. The state airport system plan also has a very highly recommended section to establish rules and regulations and minimum standards for airport with the same idea in mind, to make sure that the people of Minnesota interests are served. And we are now engaged in a master planning process for the next 20 years, looking at the airport going forward, and this is an integral part of that. Make sure we stay on the right heading as we go forward. So, and I just might say that we were notified yesterday that we did get the grant for the master plan. So it's, what is it, Brady? $463,000 for the master plan, is that federal?
Yeah, it started with a 4.
We started with
I didn't memorize any further.
000. Yeah. So we're glad that the anticipation has proven worth the time. So I'm here to endorse it personally and as representative of the Airport Commission, and to answer any questions that the public might have or that you might have going forward with this. Thank you.
Any questions that commissioners have? I would just like to thank Attorney Hicken for all of her work with the nuances of writing an ordinance, and I want to thank again John Barton for all of his attention to detail as we massaged everything back and forth between the FAA and MnDOT Aeronautics. It was not an easy task. As you said, it's been about a year, so we're very excited to be at this point today. Any other questions, remarks? All right, we will close the public hearing. And is there a motion to approve our airport ordinance?
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallace. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right.
Thanks,
Good
John.
job.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we will return at this point to item 8, Administrator, and we want to go to 8B, which is our curling club lease.
Yes, and so as the chair mentioned earlier in the meeting, I wanted to pull this item to provide a little bit of new information that we received just last week regarding the equipment at the curling rink. So we do have a repair that's needed. One of the compressors there has faulty gaskets that need to be replaced. And because the gaskets failed, we lost the refrigerant in it. And so the Freon needs to be replaced, the gaskets need to be replaced, and that will bring the compressor back into good working order. Yesterday, Sarah Waddle and I had a phone call with Brian Smith, who's with the Curling Club, and that conversation was extremely helpful to both of us in understanding the system, its age, how it works, what's been replaced to date. And so, you know, and we've talked also with Brian Silence about, you know, what, would it make sense to replace this equipment, or is it more appropriate to simply repair it? He feels confident that a repair would be the more appropriate step to take. And so the bid that we've gotten for the repairs is upwards of 20, and I can get you the exact dollar amount here in a moment. It is $23,423.24. So, and again, this is something that, you know, we do have a certain amount of contingency in the maintenance budget, but this really kind of exceeds what that contingency would allow. And so I just wanted you to be aware that this is something that we'll need to proceed with in order to have curling at the community center this winter. A couple other things that I want to mention. So we've not had curling the last couple of years because of the pandemic. And the Curling Club is very eager to get a full season under its belt. They do have a bonspiel scheduled for the end of October. And so with, you know, supply chain issues, as the sheriff was talking about earlier, you know, we would basically need to get the ball rolling on this repair pretty much immediately to make sure that we could accommodate the Curling Club's schedule for that first bonspiel. So I just wanted you to be aware of all of that before you approve the contract with the Curling Club. And then also, we would like your consent to proceed with the repairs based on the quote that we've gotten.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Hawkins.
So what is the age of the compressors?
So there are actually 4 compressors. The equipment is original to the community center. But the system's actually newer than that because we've replaced 3 of the 4 compressors in the last 5 years.
That's what I thought, we did them all, but we didn't do
So
one?
there's one that, this is the one that has a failing gasket. So yes, so basically, I mean, this would bring, and the condenser is also new. The old condenser, and I think you live in that area, you may recall the old condenser was super loud, could be heard down by the harbor apparently. So that's been replaced. So we've put some money into this system. And so at this point, repairing that 4th compressor would, I think, probably hold us in good stead for years to come.
And can you remind me what a condenser cost? I can't remember.
I don't, Brady, do you recall that? Because I don't have that number at hand.
I'm just trying to, and we had to replace 3. Now we'll fix the 4th, and it's 23,000. I'm just wondering, as far as
Yeah, so what I
long-term.
can tell you is, so I asked Brian Silence about the, possibility of just, hey, what, would it make more sense just to replace the whole thing? And that's when we started learning about the incremental improvements that we've made, the replacements. The cost of replacing the system would be somewhere in the mid $100,000, 150-ish, is it the ballpark I've heard? So this is quite a bit less than that. And again, it also gets us to a point where most of the major components of the system should be good to go for a number of years. So that's, and we can get you what the cost of the compressor replacement was, or the condenser replacement rather.
Commissioner Mills.
Yeah, my memory too is that the Freon or whatever is a significant cost. And so the whole
It is.
discussion in the past was like, well, if we're gonna have to replace the Freon one way or another, then,
Mhm.
yeah. So that's unfortunate that it all leaked out.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, to your point, Commissioner Hawkins, there's no question, it's an expensive system to operate. The reason that I think, you know, this effort and the curling club's work needs to be supported is that we really have a few venues in which people can do indoor winter activities here in the community. And I think there's a potential, as Sarah and I are actually going to be meeting with members of the curling club here in the next couple of weeks to talk about their plans for recruitment and growing participation in curling. Because, you know, I think the membership skews, as our community does, skews a little bit older. But, you know, there are a lot of young people who are interested in curling. I think there's a potential to really bring some new people into that activity. So that's in the works too, is talking with the curling club to talk about future planning and recruitment for additional participation.
And as a former curling club member in high school, 1 year, I think it would be nice if our school could maybe put a team together again.
And I think that's one thing we'd like to talk about, yes. Yeah.
Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. Well, I think having another winter activity is certainly important in the community. Whose budget does this come out of?
This would come out of the maintenance budget.
Maintenance, okay. And I don't know what the offset would be from the curling members to be a part of this over the season. Do they pay like individual fees, or how does that work?
Well, they pay membership dues, which go into the, that go to pay for the lease, basically, and that's pretty much all they can cover. In fact, I think, Sarah, they were kind of concerned, they weren't sure if they'd be able to fully cover the cost of this lease.
Yes, when we initially started discussing the lease for this.
Do you want to, would you mind coming up to the microphone? Sorry.
They were concerned about, if, they were just worried since they haven't had a season for a couple of years. But they did come back to the board and say that they would like to proceed with the lease at the full cost that it has been in the past. So we appreciate their efforts in that direction already. So we're expecting the lease, as you see it before you, to be what it was prior to the pandemic. And then the Community Center Board has noted that there will come a time when we need to talk about increasing the lease cost because it hasn't been increased in a number of years for the curling club. However, we didn't feel that this was the time to ask them to do that for this year. So, yeah.
I think it would be nice for the curling club to come back and get on their feet and grow a little bit.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions or remarks? Not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the lease and to do a repair and add the Freon.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Svallesen. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Great.
Very good. So just a couple of other items to report this week. So I had a conversation recently, actually, Amanda Weberg with the Soil and Water Conservation District emailed me to express an interest in energy conservation in county buildings as a way of reducing costs. And so we had a conversation about energy efficiency and sustainability broadly. And we're interested in putting out a survey to staff to see if there is interest in creating a small group to lead a county sustainability team that would be focused on energy efficiency, which ties into the capital improvement plan update that we're developing. And also just, focus on the different ways that we can make our operations less environmentally impactful. So, for example, we do recycling in our buildings, but we don't have a really cohesive program to do that. It's kind of ad hoc, And it depends on people, depends actually on our custodial staff, like picking cans and stuff out of the trash. And to my knowledge, that works okay, but we'd like to have a more organized approach to that. Likewise with energy efficiency, our buildings use a lot of propane in the winter, a lot of electricity. Cooling this building is expensive in the summer. Maybe not this summer, but generally. And I'm sorry. And so anyway, I think there are opportunities for us to engage staff in making our buildings operate in a more sustainable way, lower cost way. And so I just wanted you to be aware of that, and I'd like to publicly thank Amanda for coming forward to suggest this possibility. And I'll be following up with her to, again, solicit staff involvement in that activity. It's going to be, I expect it'll be a small group, but mighty, so. So that's one thing. Related to the CIP update, I want to recognize April Zimmer, who's been doing a lot of work to get together what documents we do have in terms of floor plans and diagrams for our buildings. Those are needed by CRBPS, our vendor, to develop 3D models of all of our buildings. And they need to have those models completed before they do walkthroughs. And so, excuse me, I'm so sorry. I had indicated to you at the last meeting, I believe, that they were tentatively looking at doing site visits this week. However, we were not able to get all the 3D models constructed before this week. So now the timeline is that they're hoping to be here sometime around the end of the month. We don't expect that's going to delay the completion of the project, which is still scheduled for the end of the year. So the other thing, as we're moving forward on this, once we have the 3D models and the walkthroughs done, we're going to be putting together some potential proposals for future investments. And as part of that process, the vendor did include up to 3 public meetings where we would have like an open house. Residents could come in, they could look at the information that we've gathered so far, provide input on that information, talk about what they think the priorities should be, and then have a very kind of transparent and engaged process where residents can participate. Because the last time we did this, I think we missed that step and it didn't lead to a good outcome. So that's something that we're working on. And so when I do have definite dates for the site visits, I'll share that information. I should mention also that our Budget and Facilities Advisory Committee was interested in possibly meeting with our consultant when those site visits occur. So I'm going to facilitate that as well. The other thing I want to mention related to the CIP is, we have a portfolio of over 20 buildings that we are responsible for. And I'm talking about buildings, not just things like radio towers, but actual buildings. And for an organization our size, that's a lot. And we have a very small maintenance staff. And over time, that staff has been, their workload has accrued all kinds of new tasks that were the result of, before we had an administrator, the county just always stepped up when there was a need. And so we've got four staff members doing the work of more than 4 people. And so I'm keenly interested in finding ways to look at how we can reduce that footprint. Because it's either we add staff or we right-size the workload to the staff that we currently have. And so this Friday, I'm meeting with some folks regarding Colville Town Hall. And on Saturday morning, I'm planning to meet Dan Meyer up at the Hovland Town Hall to talk about those facilities, talk about how they're used. I know that they're really important community resources, and I want to understand kind of the frequency of use and what is involved, what benefit is the county getting and the community getting from from those buildings, because I think we have to ask the question, you know, are there opportunities for us to maybe reduce our footprint? And so that's what I'm going to be digging into in those conversations. So, any questions about that? Yes, sir.
Not a question, just I think you're on the right track from the perspective, as I stated earlier, or before, that we have to understand what our current obligations are to maintaining the facilities we have as we look forward, build in some life cycle management, do these kind of things. And I think it's appropriate to look at all of the facilities we have, how they're being used, what's the best use for them,
Right.
and the maintenance activities. I'm really excited about your previous discussion about making them as energy efficient and this type of thing, so that it all works together to try to give the best value for the facilities that we have and their benefit to the residents of the county. That's what we're doing it for.
Right. I think job number one is taking care of what we have.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like, you know, our maintenance staff right now are just not well-positioned to be able to do that.
Right.
They're just spread too thin. And so I think there's a need to look for ways to do that work better, to be more efficient, and to make sure that the amount of work that they have to do is appropriate for the size of team that we have. So that's one thing. I also wanted to update you on the classification compensation study that is moving forward. We had a meeting last week where we finalized, and Commissioner Mills can say more about this if he wishes, because he's part of that group. We finalized the metrics that we're using to select comparable counties. You know, it's been a long process, but I feel like we're in a good place. And again, I've said before, we've had really active participation from all the members of that group, which include our 3 bargaining units. So really feel good about that process. And I'm hoping that within the coming 2 to 4 weeks, we'll have some substantive information to share about how those comps are shaking out and how that picture is coming into focus. So.
I don't have anything further to add, just that it was so far a great process. Be really curious to see what comes of it.
Mm-hmm. We all are.
Yeah, there's one thing that I think is worth noting is Cook County is 11th in the state for for highest median home price. And so that's a significant barrier for employees, new and people who are renting. And so that's one of the factors that we rated very highly as a group, to look at comparables, and so when you do that, you want to look on either end, you know, who are the top 10, and then who is below the 10 below 11th place too, and try to get a good swath within that, and if there's other metrics that we can find similarities with. So yeah. That's all.
All right.
So those are kind of the big pieces. Also, we've received budget proposals from the departments. We're putting those together for your consideration at the next meeting. And that will be the first look at how the budget is shaping up and kind of what the levy impact is going to be. That document will have some placeholders for information that we aren't going to have until the end of August, namely the health insurance premiums. What we did last year, I think, and what is our practice typically, is we assume a 10% increase and hope that it's much less than that, which it was last year. Actually, we had a cut last year. But, you know, it's not clear that we can count on that this year. In fact, I would expect there's going to be a bump up, but I hope it's a modest one. So anyway, we'll share the information that we have available at the next meeting.
Well, we will look forward to that. Commissioner Mills?
Just on that note, both budgeting and health insurance, the city is budgeting for 30% increase in health insurance, which is huge. That's very guess you'd call it conservative, but it's also very liberal for its budget. And so where I'm going with that is the library has city employees, and so we've budgeted for a 30% increase. I have spoken with the city council and really encouraged them to shop again for health insurance. They left the Northeast Service Cooperative because there had been so many increases in health insurance. And then they went to, I'm not sure what pool they're in, but it's a much smaller pool. And so when there's a lot of claims there, it can't be spread out as much. And so that's what's happening. And so I'm trying, I gave a plug to join the Northeast Service Cooperative again. And there was some hesitancy from city administration about that because of the past increases. And also I got the impression that it was kind of difficult to work with them, but my understanding is that it's been a great transition for us, just staying with Northeast Service Cooperative and going to a different provider. So that's about all I can tell them was, well, we've had a good experience, and last year we had a 10% reduction. So, but that'll be forthcoming with the library budget. You'll see. That's the biggest change.
Speaking of big changes, I just wanted to reiterate, we are going to be including in this year's budget a cover sheet for each department that highlights key changes in line items. So if something went up or something went down, or there's a new line item, you'll be able to readily see that in the cover sheet. So you won't have to hunt through line by line to see.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that's, again, that's just for the sake of transparency, both for this board and for the public, so that folks know how the county's spending tax dollars.
Nice.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
That's all I have.
All right. We'll move on. Commissioner reports or updates? Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. Well, it has been at least 3 years, if not 4 years, that the invasive species group had not met. So we finally met. It was great to see everybody again and some new faces. Tia Parks is going to head that up. And invasive species of the ground, that means the ditches, our soil, all of that. There's a lot of opinions about the lupin, whether they're invasive or whether they're just a nice flower in the ditch. And of course, it comes down to mowing and certain maintenances that the highway department does too. But it was good to get out there and visit with people, and from Sugarloaf to forestry and all that. So we'll be meeting quarterly, so our next meeting won't be until the fall, but it'll be a good time to report what's been going on. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I have a little ditch that I keep watching in Tofty because I lived there a long time. And so I'm guessing, where's the invasive stuff coming? You know, there's roses and there's different things. Invasives of the lupin have not attacked it yet, so it's kind of like, yes, it is true. When lupin come in, everything else goes. So I'm keeping my eye on it, though. That's my contribution.
Well, thank you. And I attended that meeting for the first time in person since the pandemic as an alternate, because I was just really curious to get to know people and be part of the group. And one of the things I found real interesting is they're looking for out-of-the-box solutions to work together. Developing memorandums of understanding about if they see something invasive, they can deal with it. They don't have to make 42 phone calls to figure out whose responsibility it is, that they're going to try to work on a common sense approach to dealing with it. So that was really encouraging. And to see the collaboration be seen between so many different agencies. Mm-hmm. And Sarah was there. It was really nice to have it in the community center and have a Zoom option along with the meeting in person for that. So thank you. One thing, thinking of soil and then thinking of water, I participated again in the Rainy River, Vermilion River, One Watershed, One Plan. We're in the throes of developing a 10-year plan for that watershed. And just so people get it on their calendar, August 16th, which is a Tuesday, there'll be a meeting at the Seagull Community Center from 5 to 7:30 to talk about the plan. We are fortunate in Cook County in that the waters, like down by Seagull, are in really good shape. We're looking at protecting our waters. We don't have to make a lot of changes to improve the water there. We just want to protect it. But it'll be a really important meeting, and I think after all the flooding this spring, people really understand the watershed and where that water goes much better now. Down by International Falls, they just lifted the flood warnings yesterday. 49 days they had those flood warnings, so we're happy that's been lifted. We had a really interesting community leadership racial equity meeting a couple of weeks ago, and the weekend prior to Indigenous Peoples Day. So Indigenous Peoples Day is October 10th. There's going to be an event in Grand Portage, and we are trying to secure the Lieutenant Governor to speak at that event, and also the new Miss Minnesota, who is Indigenous. So we'll have more information coming out. We hope to have a family-friendly event on either Saturday or Sunday. We're just working out schedules with those we've asked to speak, so we'll keep you informed about that. Other commissioners, other updates? All right, we will move on. Just to note a couple of meetings. We have our public hearing for 5th Avenue West tonight, and that will be here at 6 p.m. in the Commissioners' Room. And then an HRA work session coming up July 14th, which is Thursday at 5 p.m. here as well. We have our lodging tax comparison for information, and then we would like to recognize some of our staff for July anniversaries. Playman Dimitrov, Mitch Everson, 12 years in land services. That's amazing. Phil Larson with SWCD has been with us for 6 years. Auditor Powers, 31 years. Does it seem that long?
I think it seems like a typo.
It's much longer than that?
Yeah.
We've checked, it's 31 years. All right. Christopher Schrupp in the Sheriff's Office, 9 years, and Dagmara Smith, PHHS, 6 years. And then we have some milestone anniversaries. Chris Fenstad at the Recycling Center, 5 years. Attorney Hicken has been with us for 15 years. Yay. And we noted that next year she'll be here half as long as Auditor Powers. So we'll be watching for that math.
Interesting math, yeah.
And Britta Moose with the Sheriff's Office, 5 years. And then we have a new hire, Shawn Smith, in our Highway Department as a mechanic. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So
Make the motion.
Support?
We have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you all.